and welcome. I am so excited to be here with you. Thank you. It's been a while since I did any streaming, and I've got a really exciting chat today with my friend and an artist who I greatly admire, not just for her art, but also for her interest in the world, in other artists, in techniques, and like me, Helen shares an interest in streaming and demonstrating. So the ideal person to have a chat like this with. So without further ado, I shall introduce you to Helen. Here she is, Helen. She's that way. Artist and teacher. Hi, Helen. How are you doing?
Hello, Gail. I'm really well, thank you. And this is such an exciting project that we've set up here.
We're talking on Zoom and broadcasting on all sorts of platforms. So, yeah, that's fabulous. Well, we're going to be going through some slides. We've each prepared some slides on some of Cezanne's work that stood out to us from his recent exhibition. And we're going to be talking about practical ideas and techniques that we have managed to take away from the exhibition. So we've each found it really, we were just talking about how useful we found it, and Helen came up with a great idea to share that here. So it's really nice to have a record of it. So welcome if you're watching live, and also if you're watching on recording. If you're watching live, you should be able to engage with us in the comments. So if you want to say hi, let us know if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch. And if you want to ask any questions, we'll do our best to respond. So we're going to go through some slides. We'll each do about 10 minutes of talking. We're going to keep it short and sweet. Yeah, just that's kind of it really. So I'm going to switch over now so you can see the reference photos that we're going to be talking to. So we've got some already prepared. So if people want to put something in the chat, I will show you how it will show up. So if I just type in hello and welcome, then you'll see that it's going to come up in that space in the middle between us and the slides. So there's space there for anyone who wants to make any observations or questions. While we wait for people to drink their tea and get typing, Helen, would you like to talk? This is
absolutely
guy. This looks like Cezanne off on a plein air trip.
That's right. I think, Gail, the reason I was inspired to do this conversation with you, and I think we've mentioned this many times, is that we are both on a very, very similar wavelength. I think we've both got this very, very inquiring practice that we follow. We're both keen to know more, and we want to analyse opportunities like that exhibition to see what we could glean from it. I know you went with yesterday, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes. We had a fantastic time. Yeah. And did you?
Yeah, and I went with Paula Kemp.
Yep. Hi, Paula, if you're watching, and hi, yesterday.
Yes. Yeah, we had a fantastic day out there. Yeah, it was really good. But one of the things you said, I think you went first to the exhibition, and you said you felt that you could have hung any of the paintings on your wall at home. And I thought that was just a great statement, because that was the impact of it, really. When you walked in, it felt kind of domestic somehow. You know, the paintings are all of a domestic scale. They're beautifully lit, so they were alive on the walls, I felt, you know, and it just blew my socks off. And I knew you'd had a similar response, so I thought we'd have a lot to say about it, really. Yeah, backtracking, I think both of us have come at this from slightly different angles. Obviously, you know, your work has a focus on the figure and the portrait, whereas mine is more perhaps landscape and still life. So we've both got different, we bring different things to Cezanne's work. So for me, and it's a brilliant place to start, Cezanne doing his walk out to go plein air painting, and that fabulous photo, I love it. He's got his pochard box on his back. Those are probably the legs of the box strapped on his
I was wondering.
Yeah. Yeah, so the guy's ready to go, and probably climbing mountains all over at
Yeah, I
once.
expect we can both identify with that lovely feeling of setting off full of expectation of what you're going to produce, the miracles you're going to work on
Oh,
canvas.
totally, totally. Yeah, yeah. And he had this wonderful landscape to work in as well. So yeah, I completely relate to that. It's fantastic to see. And he did watercolor sketches outside. He did take full size canvases outside too to work on. How much he did outside and how much he did in the studio seems unclear. And I think it's probably a bit hard for anyone to know, whether he retouched his paintings when he got back into the studio. But certainly I felt that the paintings that I saw at the exhibition had an energy to them. There was a real, that kind of immediacy that you get when you paint in the landscape. And I think there's nothing quite like that, really. And it really came through in his work. And that really chimed with me because it's something I'm trying to learn really all the time, to have that honest response to my subject. I mean, whether it's flowers or whether it's the landscape.
Yes.
But certainly going out there, all weathers, put a hat on, keep warm, get out there and sort of experience it, because there is nothing like it. And he had this term, which I've been trying to find out a little bit more about, but he used this phrase, city sensations. So when he was out in the woods or in the landscape, he was trying to record these city sensations. And my French is not great. This is a kind of mashup. But apparently, the word in French, sensations in French, is related to the word senti, which is to feel.
Oh, yes.
So the Impressionists generally, the Impressionists, referred to recording sensations, to trying to describe the sensation of light in the landscape or whatever, the atmosphere. So, it's got this direct relationship in French to feel, to feeling, and any plein air painter can describe this, I think. That when you're out there, it's not just what it looks like. You're not just painting a picture. It's a whole immersive experience. That's just so good for you in every way. It's just the fresh air, the bird song, whatever. It's just, there's nothing quite like it. I'm very evangelical about it. My students will tell you so.
Well, I think that whole
them about it.
It really helps with the with that sense of leaving things fresh, doesn't it? I think if you've only got a limited amount of light, I mean, I know he had a bit more light perhaps than we do with his location, but when you have a limited amount, in our case it's just about to pour with rain. You can't fuss over stuff, can you? You've really got to be direct. Yeah, so shall we look at some of the work that you've chosen?
Absolutely. Yes, go ahead.
So, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of a nightmare with my reference photos. I don't know why it's gone back to the start again. Hang on.
All right.
Nearly there. Right. Here we are. This is the first one. This looks like your winter practice.
Yes.
So
what have you got there?
I'm showing your setup in the snow.
Yes. So that's kind of following the picture of Cezanne with his backpack. I wanted to show my little kit that I take out if I'm doing a small painting. It's kind of zooming to, there we are, this one, yes. So, so out there in the cold, with the pack I had a rucksack that I take out with me and a little pochard box that fits onto a tripod like that. And to be honest, it was, I think it's the best couple of hours you could possibly spend. The farmer happened to come along. The farmer came along and left fresh tracks through the snow while I was stood there painting. It was a bit of serendipity, and it just gave me this wonderful foreground. And it's amazing, how small an outdoor painting kit can be. Or even, I think you've got another image there, I hope, of my
Shall
sketchbook.
I move on? Yeah. Yes, your sketchbook is showing now. Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of a delay, Helen. It's showing. I'll just reassure you that it is showing on this stream.
That's okay. Yeah, so that's what I do a lot of. So obviously we don't all have time to go out and spend hours out there, but I find even just, these are like snapshots, my little sketchbook, sort of pocket-sized sketchbook. But I go out and do, 10-minute sketches. And it's like getting the equivalent of a snapshot, really. But it does give me ideas, even doing that. And when I lost the sketchbook recently, You may have heard about the
Yes.
drama. I left it in the back of a taxi, but I got it back, obviously.
Hooray, hooray.
But yeah. I was bereft. I thought, oh, crumbs, all that stuff, means nothing to anybody else, which I mean is really valuable. So I was so glad that I got it back. But that's what I do. So I walk the dog and I, take a little bit of watercolor with me and a pencil, and it all fits inside my coat, and it's just lovely. You just see things all the time. This landscape where I walk the dog up on that hill, the light is glorious, that you see the most amazing things, and we're just living in Staffordshire, it's not Provence, it's a sort of northern bit of the Midlands, and yet every day the light and the weather and the sun, there's inspiration all the time out there, and I love just, getting a little bit of that, because just actually the action of doing it, just sitting there, just looking and absorbing all of that, is actually brilliant. It's not so much about the product, but it's the actual sitting there and absorbing all of that, which is fantastic. And it's brilliant for your mental health as well. I have to say, there is nothing quite so calming. It makes you feel more philosophical, perhaps, gives you a little bit of distance on life, and, all that stuff that's so good for us.
So do you have a bit of Cezanne ringing in your ears or in your mental image when you're painting now? Do you think anything about the exhibition that that has affected your practice in this situation that you're showing? I know we don't have the sun.
I would say, yeah.
And hello, Caroline, by the way. Thank you for Caroline says she loves the chat.
Good.
My sister.
I thought we'd be good at this, yes, I do. There was a freshness to his work, and I think it takes a real focus, a real determination not to fiddle and not to try and neaten your work or smarten it up so that viewers see all that kind of weight of pressure that we have as artists to conform to certain kind of tropes, whatever they are. And I love that Cezanne was one of the earliest artists to leave his work unfinished, to say, that's it, I've done enough, put the frame on it, off you go. And I think that's so refreshing. And I think that's probably the biggest point that I took away, really. Yes, those paintings looked as fresh as the day they were painted,
Yes, and he wasn't overly, from what I understand, he wasn't overly saddled with a sense of wanting to conform. And what he was a bit of a crusader, wasn't he, I think? And I think, since we both have that, whilst we appreciate all the work that's being created around us, and it all does feed in, well, certainly speaking for myself, it all goes in to the melting pot, but at the same time the need to just reproduce what's gone before, for me, I don't know about you, but that's less interesting, although
we kind of walk a tightrope, don't we? You want to learn from our predecessors, but we've got to put in a dose of ourselves as well. We need to find our own authentic voice that we put into that mix.
Just to say hello to Paula and Sandra, thank you so much. It's great to know that you're enjoying this. They both, Sandra says, I agree, sitting and absorbing is uplifting.
Yeah, I think Sandra N is probably my student, I think.
Nice,
Sandra from Birmingham.
Shall I move on to the next slide, Helen?
Yes, do. Yes, sorry.
So this is your landscape with tracks. It's got your So
and it relates to there's a Cezanne that follows as well. And one thing that really struck me in the exhibition, I took lots of notes when I was there, was how he seems to use quite a high horizon line in a lot of his paintings. And I did that quite deliberately when I was painting the tracks. I wanted to see the effects of doing that. So not a great enormous sky. The sky is in the top, I don't know, fifth of the painting. But, what does that do? How does that change the painting? And I think he was, to my mind, and I'm no expert here, but to my mind, I think he was constantly seeking to kind of flatten the surface. I don't think he was about, painting great depth in the way that perhaps Turner might have done or something, that is kind of evoking massive space. I think he was bringing the landscape to us. And I think he does this with his tree paintings too, and his still lifes. He takes you right in there. Things are often cropped off the frames, and you feel like, you're really immersed in that thing, particularly when you're stood in front of a large canvas like that. That he takes you right in, and that's more of that sensation thing.
Yes.
And I think, obviously this is kind of part of a process, this painting, but I think there's that's worth exploring. That's something I'm exploring, and that painting prep on that.
Yes, I love how to your point, that by making that horizon high, he gives you more of the ground, doesn't he? The ground that you would be standing on, and his painting of the forest, is it the forest floor? That as well, you've got a sense of what you would be standing on if you were there. I really like.
Yeah, and I think a good painting does that. I love that painting of yours, that self-portrait that you did. That it kind of plonked us in your studio, looking at you. That great sweeping foreground that you put in. We were there. And that was so dramatic. And you do feel, you get that sense of being in there. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Do you want to click on?
Yes, sure. Yes. So the next one is a landscape showing lots of houses, and a comment. Thank you, Sue is watching on Facebook. She says, Helen, you're describing mindfulness. Lovely. Great for one's mental health. That's so true.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So the next image is you've got his view. Is it the over there? This is the one. Yeah, this is the one with the high horizon line in it.
Yes.
And again, he's looking at the shapes in the houses. There's no one focal point here. He's throwing the rule book out when it comes to composition, and he's looking at the shapes of the roofs. There's no particular kind of center or focus to this. It's kind of shape and design on canvas, isn't it? It's a fascinating painting. I think I spent a long time looking at that one, looking at what he was doing. He does use a bit of atmospheric perspective in it. Those colours are getting bluer and
but not exaggerated, is it? He's got those nice acid greens in the foreground. But I think I'll be talking about composition a little bit later, and I think similarly to your observations about this, I don't know if this is what you meant, but I feel like he didn't spend a lot of time premeditating his composition, and sometimes he's got some really interesting crops which I like. He doesn't look as though he's been following lots of rules, not that they're but it works. Like cropping those houses.
You kind of have to know the rules to break them in a way, don't you? Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Do you want to press on?
Yes, sure. Yep. So this is there we go. Yeah, sorry, it's a bit slow moving on into the screen, but this is the forest floor, looking up through the beautiful angular lines of the trees. And if you want me to zoom in to show the brushwork, I certainly can, Helen. Just let me know.
Oh, that would be good.
Okay. Going in.
So I'm just waiting for my. Here we are. Lovely. Yeah. So you can see this all overness that he's creating, and that's definitely a takeaway for me, that there's no particular focal point. The canvas is full of trees and foliage and ground, and he's not doing. If you think of people like thinking of Claude Lorraine or someone like that, a kind of classical painting where everything is beautifully balanced and all that leads you in. Chuck that out. We've got shape, there's negative spaces he's painting. The brushwork is so lively, and he sweeps, in a way that kind of unifies it. It's not a mishmash here. The sweeping brushwork helps to keep it all together, I think. It's a really clever painting, I think.
Yes, beautiful. I agree. Right, I will shrink that back down so people can enjoy the full impact before moving on. Right, okay, shall I move to the next slide, Helen?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, right, so this is your magnolia in situ. Absolutely stunning, this painting.
Thank you. Well, that's it. I mean, that kind of says it all, really. I wanted to paint outside. The weather was iffy. The weather forecast was worse. The forecast was bad. But I was determined to get out, because you never know, A, they could be wrong, and B, it could be worse tomorrow. So
I love your optimism. I think that's a vital ingredient in the painting process. Optimism.
Absolutely. Get out there and have a go, because it could work. And this is one of the nicest outdoor paintings I think I've ever done.
Yes, it's
I
absolutely
loved it.
stunning.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much. Thank
yeah.
you. And I just, yeah, happiness on a plate, really. So yeah,
So do you mean you love it?
and it didn't rain.
You love the memory of the process, or you love the way it
Right.
captured what you saw?
It's
Mm,
all those things,
mm,
absolutely. And
hmm
a painting is more than the sum of its parts. I was painting and painting and painting, and I stepped back, across the other side of the lawn, and I had a look at it, and there was a real kind of, oh, there was like that kind of moment with it. Oh, okay, that works.
hmm
So lovely. I don't need to do that much then. And it's all very
hmm
free and easy. There's not a great deal of fiddling
hmm
about with it.
But I
And
can
the
really,
underpainting that was wiped off the top.
sorry.
Yeah, as I was saying, I wiped out a previous painting, so there was some colour left underneath it, and I think that helped. So there weren't
Yeah,
gaps.
yeah,
Sometimes a painting will look more unfinished if you've got white gaps in it, but there weren't there because of the help from the under
yes,
painting. The white
yes.
gaps. Sorry, go on, Graham.
I was just going to say that you've really applied what you were saying about Cezanne's tree, his forest painting, in that you've got the negative spaces there in the sky, you've got you're showing some of the ground, you've got that sense of rhythm as well, which is you often see in nature, don't you? But to be able to put that in your painting is wonderful. Yeah, I think it really creates a sense of, it's not a still, it's not a still, it's like a living organism, that
Blowing a
beautiful
gale at the
tree.
time.
And and
It was windy at the time, so I was doing this. So you do what you can,
oh,
but yeah, you're right.
yeah,
And actually,
yeah,
nature's a gift like that because shapes are repeated, aren't they? The flowers are repeated all over. So yeah, it's
yes,
part
yeah.
of it, isn't it?
And
Yeah,
Caroline said that's a
certainly.
brilliant
Okay.
phrase. It might be bad today, but it could be worse tomorrow.
I
Yes.
am quite philosophical. Yeah.
You are. I can vouch for that. Shall I move on? Is that
Oh, yes,
yeah?
because we haven't even started on your choices yet.
No, well, this is your beautiful painting of brambles and leaves. I'm sorry, I haven't written down the titles.
So
Your
it will
leaf.
be Perpetual Spring.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't
it's
know.
got an
Yeah,
acid.
so
Yeah.
I mean, you'll just see. I just thought you could flick through these because you'll just
hmm
see they kind of illustrate what we've
Okay.
said.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
this is a
that's it.
wonderful, wonderful foliage, and Jane says Jane loves that painting.
Oh, bless.
So
Thank you,
that's
Jane.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it's
Jane.
really lovely. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
thank you,
another one of
Jane,
my
and thanks
students.
for
Yeah.
joining. Hi.
Hello,
Um,
Jane. Yeah, we've got a home crowd here, Gail.
yeah,
Sorry, my dog. Can you hear my dog? Sorry.
he is very
I knew
welcome.
somebody was coming. Yeah, my husband will get this.
Okay. And this
All
is
right, you'll
I've
fire
also
away.
got
Yeah.
your forest painting as well coming up now,
Yeah.
which is again very reminiscent of Cezanne's, but with your style. It's got your freshness and your love of green. You really are green queen.
I avoided it for years as well. Isn't that
Uh,
funny? So funny, the
yeah.
things that happen anyway. But yes,
Yeah.
yes, so you get the gist, don't
hmm
you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yes, and then we move
Uh,
on to his still life with the bowl of fruit and a knife in the foreground. Really interesting. And
but
then some,
we've
yeah,
talked,
yeah.
I was going to say, we've talked a lot about my work, Gail. If you want to just put your selection up and go on to the
Well,
portraits and
that's
from
lovely.
your
Well,
point of
I
view.
will be talking about a still life. So yeah, if there's any, I'll obviously interrupt if things come back and you're keen to interject. I shall look forward to ongoing,
No
rather
worries.
than a monologue. I'll try not to do a monologue. So thank you, Helen. That was
Be an
brilliant.
audience,
You've
yeah.
got us off to a great start, and thanks everyone. If anyone wants to ask any questions or chip in, it's just so lovely to have you watching, and thank you. And
Yeah.
ditto, if you're watching on a recording, don't hesitate to drop us a line. We're always delighted to hear other people's thoughts on. That's really what this is about: is sharing ours and other people's. And
Absolutely.
Helen, I think we end with your wonderful still life with the lemons in the foreground. Look at this, amazing. Are they cosmos, those flowers?
They are cosmos.
They're
Yes, they are. They
beautiful,
are. And you
absolutely
can just
beautiful.
see the link. I mean, I think it
Yeah.
explains itself, that one.
hmm
And again, it was painted over an old canvas, so you get little glimpses of colour and texture and stuff coming through, which is brilliant for avoiding
Yes.
kind of preciousness and just
Yes.
gives it a bit of chunkiness.
Totally,
Yeah,
totally, yes. I love the
yeah,
little anecdote that was in his portrait in Cezanne's portrait of his son in the um, let me just change to you and me talking. He did a portrait of his son, and they showed that it had actually been cut on. So he'd been on one canvas, and he'd done something else, like I think it was a still life or something, on the same canvas. And the curators' labels were pointing out that you could sort of see where Cezanne had cut the canvas, and there were some traces of the other painting which they also showed, so you could see how. And I just love that,
yeah,
those traces, like you're saying, like kind of the underpainting being a previous ditched thing. I always get
yeah,
very
yeah.
twitchy about people overpainting their masterpieces, not loving them.
I
Ah,
do it all the time. I'm
you
terrible, always
do.
trying to kind of recycle things,
Me too,
um,
me too.
but
Right, I'd better
yeah,
move on, Helen, because we've got 10 more
go
minutes
ahead.
of Zoom
Yeah,
time. So,
yeah, go
right,
ahead.
okay. So, moving on, then these are. So, I wanted to talk to start by looking at composition. So, this is his huge bathers painting, and I love that. Like with the trees, he had this sense of rhythm, and he's got wonderful rhythms going to one side and up. And I love the way he portrays the figures. There's so much I like about it that appealed to my own work about, the nude, but the nude done in a really, what I consider to be a really healthy way. And I just loved sitting
Yeah,
in front of this massive painting so much that I got my sketchbook out shamelessly, as I want to do in museums, and I highly recommend that to anyone who's equally shameless. Um, and I wanted to sort of propose as a practice something I find really really nice, which is just sitting there and copying, whether you're even if you're not using the same medium. So here I was just on a tiny sketchbook with a pencil, but just as you can kind of think as you draw by writing and drawing your thoughts to help order them, when you try and actually copy a composition, and it is often just the composition, you just learn so much. And I just learned not particular things that I could name, but just there was so much that was kind of accidental, but clearly not. And just the way he treated the background, which I tend to be drawn to the figures and don't notice the background, don't notice the ones in the back, the hidden figures. So that was something that I
yeah.
really enjoyed, and something I would take to my own work. And then I'm just going to
Yeah.
show the. Sorry, Helen.
Well, I was going to say it's interesting to see it in black and white. The fact that you've had to convert it into black and white
Yes,
for your sketch
yes,
reveals all different
yes.
different aspects of it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Definitely, yes,
Sorry, carry on, Gail.
resolving the shapes. So then I was going to look at, so talking about composition as well. Here's an example. So he used it in a lot of his still lives, and as we said, in some of his landscapes and things, is this crop thing. And I do wonder, obviously we can't ask him and I don't want to project, but I do wonder if he did kind of what I do, which is that you just need to paint. And I just kind of
Yeah.
like almost, I realised that he's renowned for having set up his still lives carefully and like balanced things. And I will come on to that in the next slide. But I just think his crops, I don't know if it was deliberate, whether it was or not. It's something that I really take away from his work around not necessarily doing a sanitized composition. So that was that one. And then here was my attempt. So inspired by his painting of the jug in a still life, I set up my own still life, which just explored some of the things that he'd done in his painting here. So he's got his base, his table. It's a bit of an angle, and it doesn't look as though he's really worried too much about perspective in terms of getting it representative of what's visually correct, if that's the right word. But I love, and I hadn't appreciated until again I tried to actually arrange a still life to mimic his with similar items. And it wasn't until I did that that I thought, oh my goodness, he's actually got some of the fruit at the back deliberately raised and intersected by that jug. And I thought that's so clever, and just the way he played around with those shapes, I loved. So if I'm going to move on, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was his technique and his application of paint. And I just thought, for the conversation point of view, in future, if anyone wants to go back and look through this is his palette. So apparently he used Sennelier colours, according to Sennelier. He did use titanium white, apparently, but I think if you look at his whites in his still lives, if I go back to like that, there is almost nothing, no white in that. You know, it's blues and greens and other colours. So I think he was quite sparing with the white, but he did, out of interest, I was interested to use lots of earthy colours, of course. So that's just a little interest. So I'm coming on to one of my favourite pieces in the exhibition, the portrait of his wife. And this is, I'm going to zoom in on this because there was one particular thing I wanted to talk about in his technique, and I'm just going to move this up so that it's in front of both of us. So we're both going to disappear, I think. This will float in front of us both, because I want to go right in and just talk for a minute about how he treated this edge. And I think if you can see the edge along the side of his of the sleeve, and looking right up in the exhibition at the painting, I was fascinated by how he used, I think he must have used a, excuse me, moving this around in a rather clumsy way, but I think he must have used a palette knife, and he appeared to have defined a ridge along the side of, particularly I noticed the arm, where the arm meets the background, the green and blue joint, but he seems to have really stuck to his boundaries. So he kind of worked out these boundaries and then slathered on flat paint right up to the edge of the boundary, which was just a technique which I thought, I'm going to try that. And I love the direct composition.
It's an interesting shape he creates, isn't it? Her relationship with the chair is fascinating, isn't it? He was obviously very keen on that edge, wasn't he, of defining it in that way.
Yes, I think
brings
so.
her forward,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And so if
I always love the skirt on that one.
So this was a painting I did of my friend Debs the other day, and this is showing, I kind of just was playing with composition and playing with, so I've sat Debs on a chair and was trying to be really conscious of the boundaries, but it was a quick painting, therefore I haven't done, I haven't tried that labour that he put in doing the flatness of the paint with a palette knife, but I would love to try that. Have you ever used a palette knife, Helen? I usually see you with brushes. Do you use palette knives?
Yeah, I've tried occasionally. When you're trying to do a very fine line, I've tried doing that with a palette knife, and I cannot get on with it. My students often ask me to show them how to use it, and I find it's like trying to paint with your hands tied. So it doesn't suit my style. I love using brushwork, and that's my instrument, really. But I know people do amazing things with it. You have to use an awful lot of paint, and if not, put a medium in it or something to kind of give it some heft.
Yes.
But how about you?
No, I don't tend not to, but I would like to try it more. I think if I've got too much, if I've mixed up some paint and I don't want to waste it, I'll sometimes wipe it on the canvas in the area where that's going. And I often think, oh, that's quite an interesting mark, but I've never really gone down that rabbit hole, but I will. So don't write anything off. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. This is just the other end of the scale. This is his lovely loose, whether it's finished or not, I don't know, but just a nice loose, a loose approach. And then this was a more polished approach to the still life. And if I zoom in a bit, there was something that really attracted me. And I was trying to work out what was so distinctive about his style. And as well, I think it was those heavy shadows for me, the heavy shadows kind of under the fruit, bordering on outlining. And I don't know if this was, a precursor to, techniques that he was going to bring bring forward, and cubism, or I don't know where, or whether this was just what he saw, but
It was radical in his time. It was
yeah,
radical what he was
yeah,
doing. It was,
yeah,
Matisse did, taking off from these ideas. You had Matisse coming along, didn't you? And Van
hmm
Gogh as well,
mm,
and they were sort of heavily into outlining.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so here's the last one. The last one is just a painting, a photo of my action shot with the brush, just painting the still life, that I had a go. So the final message
Yeah.
is, please be tempted to have a go, and it's just such fun trying. Whether you're sketching in a museum, or trying to arrange a still life, or going out and painting your magnolia like Helen.
Have you got that finished painting, Gail, to show us, or is it
I
a work
haven't.
in progress?
No, I have to say it
Okay.
wasn't exactly a corker.
Oh, was it? Oh, right. Okay.
Right,
All
here we
right.
are. I've started a
Gail,
new
it's been
recording.
brilliant. Your technical skills are wonderful. Okay. Absolutely. I would not have a clue. It's quite extraordinary. Thank you so much. You've
Oh,
brought a daft idea to life and done it wonderfully.
well, thank you. You bring everything to life, Helen. I love it. It's so great,
Oh,
and it's
bless your
so
heart.
great to bounce ideas around. I just find it a tonic for the soul, and also I always want something to be practically useful, and you tick both boxes. So
Excellent.
thank you.
Excellent. That's good. That was good fun.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
really good.
much. Yeah,
Lovely.
well, thank you for riding the wave, and I hope that we can do another one. So, if anyone has got ideas of other things you might like us to talk about, please do contact us both on our social media, or send us messages. Most of you know both of us.
Yeah.
So, it just
Yeah.
remains to say thank you and goodbye.
Lovely. Bye
Yeah,
bye, everyone. Bye,
bye.
Gail.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.